everyone, Amer back again with another Mission Impossible episode review. This time I'm doing Season 3, Episode 17, which is called Doomsday. So Jim goes to that red box in the middle of some forested area again for instructions. This is actually recycled footage from the Diplomat from a few episodes ago. The mission: Carl Van Damme is an industrialist who has managed to obtain weapons-grade plutonium. And will auction it off to the highest bidder to raise capital. The IMF must get the plutonium and put Van Damme out of business. And yes, Van Damme is played by Alf Schellen from The Phoenix. Prohash lives. The IMF discusses the other potential bidders that are going to be at the auction, and that Rollin will go in as one of them based on a photo taken from Pilot, where he played General Dominguez. So Barney arrives at Van Damme's office building as a salesman, climbing above the elevator on his way up to the 7th floor, and setting himself up with some gear, working his way up to the roof, and then into the shaft that goes up to the higher floors. Jim, Willie, and Cinnamon head into a bank and make a deposit of $3 million, and Jim asks the bank manager to put him in touch with Orville Kura, one of the other bidders. They meet with Kura and his associate, played by Sid Haig again. Another opportunity for Graves and Haig to face off, which will come a little bit later, actually. Jim explains that Cinnamon is a physicist who will be able to help in terms of dealing with the plutonium. And Willie is, well, Willie. They want to help Kura buy the plutonium because they have a lot of investments in his country and want to protect them. And they also hope, of course, for other concessions going forward. The bidders gather with Van Damme and his science officer Thorgan, and they head down the elevator to see the product, as Barney works on the side of the shaft to open up a panel. He's barely able to squeeze against the wall as the elevator passes by. The group see Van Damme's device, with Barney watching through a vent from above as Thorgan removes a plutonium-containing tube from its container, puts it in a testing chamber, demonstrating its radioactivity. And the tube is put back in its place by Thorgan, who turns on the alarm and then heads back with the group to the elevator, but leaves his clipboard behind. Barney then sets himself up for the original MI cable drop, Take That, Tom Cruise, as the bidding begins. Barney opens the device and replaces a plutonium tube with an empty one. After the first round, Cinnamon advises Kura to keep bidding as the bomb is worth it. As per the plan, Rollin also works to keep the auction going to give Barney the time he needs. General Wu, one of the other bidders, asks to see the specifications again, making Thorgan realize he forgot his clipboard. And Rollin protests at the delay, but Kura is prepared to continue, so Van Damme tells Thorgan to go get his notes. As Barney climbs back up to the vent, one of the metal pieces in the roof starts to come a little bit loose, causing some plaster to fall. Barney manages to make it out undetected, but Thorgan notices the plaster and tells security to lock the building down, alerting Van Damme as well. Barney's hasty exit forces him to leave the ropes behind, which Thorgan discovers. Barney has to let the elevator go by again as he heads back to the roof and over the regular elevator shaft, heading to the 7th floor where he was supposed to go in the first place. Van Damme and Thorgan glumly realize that the tube they have is empty, but realize that the thief must still be in the building. So Van Damme orders a quiet but thorough search and tells Thorgan to put the tube back as he needs the money. He's desperate. From a quiet room on the 7th floor, Barney calls Jim and tells him what happened. Jim gives Barney some instructions, and Barney hides in the shaft as Van Damme returns to the bidding, acting casual to the relief of Rollin and Cinnamon, who presume that Barney is at least safe, though security determines that he is the one who entered the building and is unaccounted for. Jim calls Cinnamon in Van Damme's office as the security guard looks in the elevator shaft, but fortunately somehow does not see Barney, who is hanging off a beam next to the elevator. Kura wins the bidding as Barney makes a long climb down the shaft's ladder. Jim collects some money from the bank, and Willie uses an interestingly large briefcase to pull some sort of switcheroo on the money that Jim turns over to Kura's assistant, Marco. The money ends up in Van Damme's safe, but Cinnamon says she wants to see the bomb again. Van Damme tries to keep a brave face, but Kura insists that he wants Cinnamon to ensure that he's getting what he paid for. The group returns to the lab where Thorgan and Van Damme try to stall unsuccessfully, saying this is all unnecessary, as Cinnamon presses a button on a device. Cinnamon takes a tube and prepares to test it, and that forces Van Damme to admit the theft, but says the thief will be caught because he's still in the building. Cora says that's fine, but he wants the money back in his briefcase until he has what he paid for. Van Damme opens the safe to find a charred mess, and Cora starts developing a tranquil fury as Cinnamon quietly heads out of the room, hearing a gunshot from Marco as she steps in the elevator. Coming down to the main floor, she tells security that Van Damme's been shot and sits down to collect herself, allowing Barney to come up behind the remaining security guard and take him out. Jim and Willie, who return to the building as maintenance workers, take out the two guards in front of the building, and the IMF head out on the maintenance truck with the plutonium. Mission accomplished. I'm going to give this episode a grade of C-. I was a little bit torn about it. I would really like to give it a better grade, but looking at it objectively, I think that that's the grade that I'm going to settle on, and I'll tell you why. Let's start with the good. Barney's work in this episode is tremendous. There's no doubt about that, right? All the stuff that he does in the elevator, of course, is great. As I mentioned, there's the original Mission Impossible cable drop here, going through the air vent, and everybody knows, the scene from Mission Impossible 1, but, Greg Morris did it first, and we as fans of the series should be really proud of that. I also like Alf Jellin coming back as Carl Van Damme. He's lively, he's entertaining, he's lame, unfortunately, and we'll talk about that later. But he's engaging and he's still entertaining enough. Also, Wesley Lau as Thorgan. Wesley Lau he's a frequent contributing writer to the show, and also appears not really as a major character, never as a major character, but he's a minor character in a lot of seasons. I think he's probably in every season 3, 4, 5, and 6. I don't believe he's in the last season, and he always seems to have this kind of like little supporting role. In decent but not great episodes. Don't know why that is. I believe that in this particular case, Alf Jellin and Wesley Lau both contributed to the script, which is why they're in the episode. They do their parts admirably, so that's fine. I also find it kind of interesting. Obviously, when you see Alf Jellin, you think of The Phoenix, where he played Stefan Prohash, and you can go and look at that review if you like. It's very, very the layout of the mission is really, really similar. In both cases, there's some device that the IMF is targeting, that they're after. And in The Phoenix, we had Barney and Willie, who were basically, going after it. Barney couldn't do it alone just because of, the physical nature of it. And basically you had Rollin and Cinnamon, and Jim was involved in the first one, doing kind of a misdirection play, where they're really not actually doing, they're not actively participating in the mission in a sense, but what they're doing is they're playing the important role of misdirection and delaying, right? They're keeping their target busy so that the actual mission can be carried out. And I noticed, like, if you look back in The Phoenix, there's a scene where Rollin and Cinnamon are basically sitting down right next to each other in chairs, just kind of like looking at each other nervously about, what Alf Jellin's character is going to do. And in this episode, the same thing happens. They're worried because, he and Thorgan are going to go down and look at the bomb again. They're like, oh boy, Barney may be in trouble. And they're both sitting there in a very, very similar way, and that was kind of neat, the similarity and the juxtaposition of these two. That said, moving on. Everything I said, other than that last point, has a but. Barney's part is great, but he's, again, really the driving force. And I mentioned this in The Phoenix as well, that, all 5 team members are contributing, but not equally. Barney's part comes at the expense of teamwork. Also, Alf Jellin, again, he's engaging. I wouldn't know if I'd exactly call him a schmuck, I think the team does earn their win here, but I mean, there's a certain level of lameness that his character Carl Van Damme exudes here. So, as a villain, he's not up in that upper echelon, no way. Let's move on to definitely the bad. I'm a little bit torn about this one, but the idea that, you have basically a plutonium bomb and you have a way that the room that you're holding it in can be accessed with an unsecured shaft with an air vent, that seems really, really, really lame. I realize it's necessary. It has to be there, or else, there's really no mission. However, I thought about it a little bit, and I say that, it's a little bit excusable, because when they designed the building, I seriously doubt that, the building architects and engineers said, well, maybe we better design a room that isn't accessible and doesn't, have like a, ventilation, just in case there's going to be a plutonium bomb stored in that room. So, it's kind of a mixed bag there. I don't think that that's as much of a nit to pick as you might normally think. One thing that is a nit to pick is that, the auction is really light. If there was really that kind of rogue plutonium bomb out there, think about it in the real world, you'd have governments from all over the world who would be looking for this thing and be willing to pay top dollar for it. I can't imagine it would be anything different back in the 60s. And so there really should have been more bidders in this auction. It was probably, the budget constraints didn't allow that, I suppose, but it might have been nice to see that. That would have added a little bit of a touch of realism, in my opinion. I would have preferred that. I think some of the science behind the bomb, the way that Thorgan explains it, I mean, it's really not really that important, but I don't, he mentioned about how the weapon works by doing some things and then that creates a critical mass. I'm pretty sure that that's not correct. I'm not a physicist either, but just the way that he describes it, it didn't have the right sound to my ear about how a nuclear bomb would actually work. Nuclear weapon, bomb, whatever you want to call it. The final point, which I think is really the biggest flaw in this episode, is that the IMF's plan, even though, you could say, well, it went awry a little bit, but even their most basic plan revolves around Van Damme getting killed. There's no doubt about that. And that is not really, the hallmark of a great IMF plan. It really is not. The way that it shakes out is that, obviously Kura is upset that, Van Damme has taken his money, put it in his safe, and he doesn't have the bomb that he paid for. And that would, and the thing about it is, it can be kind of masked by the idea of, well, they found out that Barney had stolen it, or that it was stolen. Obviously, they don't know it was Barney. But realistically, if you think about it, the plan all along was for Cinnamon to insist that the bomb be checked again. It just so happened that the theft had been determined beforehand by Van Damme and Thorgan. Had they not known that the theft had taken place, they would have gone down. Thorgan wouldn't have argued about it. He said, yeah, sure, we'll show you the bomb again. And he would have put it in the chamber, and they would have determined that there was no plutonium in it. And the same thing would have happened. Kura would have insisted at gunpoint, give me back my money. And, again, the Cinnamon would have set off the device that, burned all of the money in the safe. Kura's not going to take a check from Van Damme, and certainly. And so there's really no ending here that doesn't, have Van Damme getting killed. And and that to me is kind of a flaw. In the really, really good episodes, that doesn't happen. The villain, the antagonist might get taken away. He might get taken away to jail, or, realize that, he's been made poor or whatever. But, whenever they resort to that, having, you know, having that sort of plan, that's really not the hallmark of a good IMF plan or a good episode. That's about all I have to say for that. There's more there actually in the discussion than I actually thought that there would be. Thank you as always for watching and listening. Please like this video, please subscribe to my channel, and please leave your comments. I'm very, very pleased that more and more people are submitting comments these days. I really, really appreciate that, and I love going back and forth with the fans and hearing what you have to say. So please, please, please keep it coming. I really, really do appreciate it. Thanks again for watching and listening, and I'll see you again next time.